This story was submitted by Zach. This happened to me just this past summer, when I started working at Walmart helping them with their remodel. It wasn't hard work, and paid well for a college student. After working there for a few weeks, I was approached by one of the cashiers while I was on my lunch break. We'll say her name is Taylor. She was a very petite Asian girl, 20 years old, and barely even 5 foot tall. She sat down at the table I was sitting alone at, and started chatting with me. She introduced herself, as we had never formally met before, and made small talk. However, I could easily tell that she was hardcore flirting with me, as she started to ask if I had a Facebook, Instagram, and suggested to me that I friend her. I'm a friendly guy, and went along with the flirting, but responded in ways that didn't suggest that I was interested in her advances, but rather being nice. She then asked for my cell phone number, to which I told her that I was not comfortable giving away my number to someone I didn't know that well. She then went on to ask me if I was busy tomorrow, and said that we should hang out. I told her I had to work at my other job, Phantom Fireworks, and that I was busy most of the day. I excused myself from the break room and said goodbye to Taylor. I get home and check my phone to see a friend request on Facebook and a follow request on Instagram from this girl. I kindly accept and went on with my night. I got up early the next day to work at Phantom Fireworks. It was about noon when my manager came up to me and asked me to come into his office. He pulled up the screen of the security cameras and asked if I had an Asian stalker. I looked at the live feed of the cameras and see Taylor walking around the parking lot, and she eventually stopped at my car. This freaked me the hell out. I guess she stalked my Facebook and found out that I worked here and saw the pictures of my car. My shift ended around 6, and when I went to open the door of my car, I noticed a sealed envelope slid into the handle. I get into my car and open the letter. Out falls a picture of Taylor, along with a love letter. It said, "Hey, I hope you're having a wonderful day at work. I'm so glad we started talking. Love, Taylor." Then she wrote a list of adjectives describing me, and followed it up by asking me if I thought her picture was pretty. I was very creeped out, and planned on talking to this girl in person the next day at Walmart. However, that same night I received a text message from a number I didn't know. I replied with the typical, "Hey, who is this?" The response from this number, "Taylor." I called her and questioned her as to how she got my number, and asked her why the fuck she would come to my work unannounced and leave me a letter on my car, and also let her clearly know that I found this very weird. I guess I had put my cell phone number on my Facebook profile. She apologized and said that she thought that I'd like it and was trying to be sweet, and then went on to ask me if I thought she was pretty. I told her that I am not attracted to her, and she got upset and hung up the phone. The next few weeks at Walmart, I would catch her following me around work, making obvious attempts to pass by the aisle I was working in, catching me while I was on my lunch breaks, and even would come in an hour early for her shift in order to see me before I left for the day. During one instance of her attempts to talk to me, she asked where I lived. I asked her why she needed to know where I lived, to which she replied, "So I can meet your parents." I had had enough. I was tired of her stalking me, and her response sent me over the edge. I yelled at her, "Why the fuck would you need to meet my parents? I don't like you, Taylor, and I'm tired of you stalking me. I'm serious. Leave me the hell alone." She ran away crying, and I went about my work. The next week, when I would come home from work, I noticed a red car that followed me all the way home, but wouldn't turn onto my small 4-house lane. This really weirded me out, as I was always wondering if it could be Taylor trying to find out where I lived. I didn't question it when I would see her at work, but I did start trying to find which car she drove to work, but never figured it out. I was home alone for the weekend, as my parents were taking my sister on a college visit. It was about midnight, and I was watching TV when I noticed headlights coming down the driveway. This caught my eye, but it's not unusual since my neighbor's teenage kids across the street are always going out on the weekends. However, the beam of headlights kept slowly coming, and I saw out my kitchen window that looked over our road that it was the same red car that had been following me previously. I froze, not knowing what to do. I tried to look out to see what this person was doing, but didn't have a view. I could see the red glow of the taillights as the car came to a stop, then shut off. Fuck, I thought to myself. Whoever this person is, they're not going away. And whatever their intentions are at midnight are probably not good. I turned off the TV and the hallway light, rushed upstairs to my room, and grabbed my knife and a small LED flashlight. I hear the doorbell ring. I stay still in my room, listening to any noises I could pick up. The doorbell rings again and again, followed by someone banging on the door. The sound was so loud that it echoed throughout my entire house. I thought to myself, this couldn't be Taylor. She wouldn't be able to pound on the door that hard. Whoever this person is has got some weight behind them. Who could it have been then? An angry customer? Someone I caught off driving one day who had been plotting revenge all this time? Whoever it was seemed pretty furious and dedicated to getting inside my house. I crept downstairs and slowly approached the front door. After they had taken a break from banging on the door, I yelled out, "Who the hell is it, and what do you want?" The reply chilled my bones and made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up, while also infuriating me. "It's Taylor! Let me in! We need to talk! Now!" I unlocked and opened the main door, ready to flip out on this crazy girl and tell her off once and for all. The only thing standing between Taylor and me was a separate thin glass door, similar to how screen doors are. I unlock it and step outside. There she is with her hands in her pockets, looking all innocent, as if she hadn't done anything wrong. I yelled at her, demanding that she stop stalking me, and told her that if she doesn't get off of my property, I would be calling the police. Her reaction to this confused me. She started grinning slowly, eventually growing into a wide smile, with her eyes popping out of her head, just staring right at me. "What the fuck is so funny? Get off of my property right now." She interrupted me and said, No. This is how it's going to work. I've been nothing but nice and sweet to you this entire time, and you've done nothing but treat me like shit. You're going to like me, and you'll be the best boyfriend to me." Is she seriously saying this to me? While thinking this, I see her reach into her sweatshirt front pocket and pull out a small pistol. The second I saw it, I ran into my house attempting to shut the door behind me, but she was right on my tail. I sprinted up the staircase, down the hallway, and into my room, quietly closing the door behind me. I hear her slowly walking up the steps. I looked around my room for my phone to call the police, but I had left it on the couch when I was watching TV. So this is it, I thought. I'm going to be murdered because some psycho girl working at Walmart couldn't get over me not liking her. At this point, I grab the knife out of my pocket and grip it tightly, while remaining concealed along the wall, behind where my door would be if opened. It's my only shot at surviving. I hear her approaching my room and opening every door on her way. Her footsteps come to a dead stop outside my door. There are no locks on my bedroom doors, and I'm shaking with fear, but my mind stays clear from the rush of adrenaline through my body. The doorknob turns slowly, and the door slowly opens. She takes 2 steps into the room when I use my force to slam the door against her. I hear a body thud to the ground and Taylor grunt in pain. I rise from my position behind the door to see her sprawled out on the floor outside of my room in the hallway, pistol still in hand. I sink my blade all the way into the shoulder of her arm that was holding the gun. She lets out an ear-piercing scream of agony, and she writhes in pain. I grab the gun, pull out the shoelace from my shoe, and used it to tie her legs together so she would be unable to escape while I ran downstairs to retrieve my cell phone. I call 911 as I run back upstairs. Taylor's still on the floor crying and holding her arm. The police arrived about 15 minutes later, and she was put into the ambulance, and I never saw her again. I gave the police my statement of everything that had happened, and the events leading up to what had occurred that night. I was told a few weeks later by an officer who came to the scene that Taylor would be charged with criminal stalking, trespassing, and attempted murder. Her trial is set for December 11th of 2015. This story was submitted by Dalek. Let me start off by saying that I am a female and I live in Scotland. At the time this takes place, I was 16 years old, and this story is the most terrifying thing to happen to me in every way. A little background first. On weekends I would walk my neighbor's dog. Technically the dog belongs to my neighbor's daughter. However, when my neighbor's daughter goes out to work, my neighbor looks after the dog. She is 84 now and can no longer walk the dog, so I decided I'd help out. One Thursday I was coming back from a trip to the theater on a bus. The only two people on the bus were me and an older lady. We came up on some roadwork traffic lights and the bus stops. On both sides of the bus were thick woods. Getting bored from all of the waiting, I gaze out the bus windows, and I see something. At first I couldn't make it out because of how dark it was, but the light bleeding from the bus was just enough for me to make out faces. Many, many faces. They were arranged in a circle, like they would be at a table or something. I couldn't see much below the necks, so I assumed they wore black. One of them catches sight of the bus, and they all looked over and saw me staring. Some got up and started walking towards the bus. I was terrified. I have never in my life been so scared as I was in this situation. I would say their faces were full of malice or something, but no, they were very normal. Not blank, but just bored, or more like inconvenienced. I wanted to move, or shout, or scream, or cry, but I did nothing. I just kept watching, staring. Before the people could reach the bus, it starts up again and drives off. I watched their faces disappear, and I realized I had wet myself from fear. Sounds stupid, I know, but I was actually that scared. The old lady or bus driver had clearly never noticed them. I suppose I don't blame them. She is half blind, and he is concentrating on the road. When the bus got to my stop, which I feel I should mention was only about half of a mile away from the woods, I got off the bus and ran home, faster than I had ever ran in my life. I got in and went straight to the bathroom and took a shower. Soaked in sweat, fear, and urine, I washed myself and cried. A lot. I told my foster parents about this, but they didn't really take it as seriously as I would have liked. That night I replayed the incident over and over in my head, and came to the conclusion that it must have been a prank or something. I know that it was a stupid thing to think, but I needed to convince myself of something. Weeks went by, and I had begun to put the story out of my mind. No one I told believed me, and I started to even doubt myself. It's funny that if we are told something wasn't true by enough people, we start disbelieving what our own eyes have seen. I always looked at this section of the wood when passing it by at night. I didn't see anything else, however, so after about a month, I walked to the woods. I made sure to go during the day. I don't know why, but there is always some kind of primal security in the day. I made my way over to where I had seen the group of people, I originally didn't see anything, but after almost giving up, I saw something glittering in the dirt. I bent over and picked it up, and it was a key. I remember wondering about what this key opened, and started thinking of all the buildings in the village that were supposedly empty. I came up with a few ideas, when I suddenly felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I never believed the idea of knowing when you're being watched, until then. I just knew it. Someone was looking right at me. The fear from before came back and gripped me tightly. Stupidly, I put the key in my pocket and ran. Why? I don't know. It seemed like a good plan at the time. But now I'm left wondering, if I had just left the key, if any of the following would have happened. While running home, I pledged to go nowhere near those woods again. However, this isn't the only woods near my village. Another few weeks passed, and I hadn't told anyone of what had happened at this time. There was a lot going on for my foster parents that I'd rather not say, but seeing as technically nothing happened, I figured I'd just forget about it. I even managed to forget about the key I had. Saturday came around, and I went over to my neighbor's house. As usual, the ridiculously energetic dog jumped at me, almost knocking me over. I hug him, and he licks my face. I grab the lead and click it to his collar, much to his disgust, I might add. My neighbor talks with me until we finally manage to leave. The dog and I approach the woods that I normally walk him in, not the same woods as where the group of people were. I plug my earphones into my phone, blast some Sabaton, and headbang whilst walking. I always only have one earphone in, so I can hear the dog if he needs me. He ran into the woods and out of vision briefly, before he appeared again covered in mud and leaves. Typical. I can never go anywhere with this dog. I knelt down next to him to at least get some of the leaves off of him. Usually he used this excuse to slobber all over my face, but not this time. This time he stayed rigid and stared behind me. Having been spooked by the last few months' events, I turned to see if he was staring at anything at all. He was. I saw a man walking slowly towards me. He wore a baklava and a black long coat. I jumped up and grabbed the dog's leash very tight. The man reached into his pocket, and that was enough for me. Despite the norm of being too scared to run, I somehow wrestled up the courage to run, and my neighbor's dog ran alongside me. He too knew something was seriously wrong. Suddenly the puddle in front of me exploded, accompanied by the loudest noise that I had ever heard. I was startled enough to turn around, and it was a gun. The man had shot at me, but thankfully he had missed. He didn't have the modern type of gun. This was a flintlock or something. I'm no gun expert, but it was old. He looked up at me and smiled, before putting another bullet into the barrel. I took this chance and ran as fast as I could. As horrible as it sounds, I lost all regard for the dog. It did follow me, however, and stayed close by. I ran so far and so fast that I had no idea where I was, but I heard him following. I ran to a large and thorny bush of some sort and crawled inside. I sat in the leaves and watched through the small gaps as he walked past. He stopped only a few feet past the bush, and I shook with terror. Covered in blood, sweat, urine, and tears, I kept as quiet as I could. This is when it finally dawned on me. He wanted to kill me. I've heard so many stories of young girls such as me being raped or sold into sex slavery, but this man meant none of that. All he wanted to do was kill me. After looking around, he continues in the direction I would have run. I must have waited in that bush for 20 minutes. After I had managed to regain my conscious mind, I clambered out of the bush and took out my phone. Signal. I was so relieved to see signal. Of course I rang the police immediately. I told the dispatcher everything and she told me she was sending someone to the village and to make my way back there if I could. I agreed, and she offered to stay on the line with me. I declined, as I had to phone home, and hung up. My foster parents weren't home, so I rang the next best person, my girlfriend Caitlin. She immediately believed me from the sound of my voice, and told me that she was coming to find me. I'll never understand how she could have been brave enough to come and get me after all I told her. She found me, and I could tell by the look on her face that I looked bad. I hobbled over to her, and she helped me back to the village and took the dog back to the neighbor. We were met by a large group of police officers. They took my statement and then took me home. An officer stayed with me and my girlfriend as the rest searched the forest. Shortly after this, my foster parents arrived home, and everything was explained by the police officers as I showered. It was agony. I was covered in small wounds from the thorn bush, those tiny cuts that sting so much. I had to get Caitlin's help to shower. That was embarrassing, as I had wet myself from fear again. However, being the near-perfect girlfriend she is, it didn't faze her. The police informed us that they had found no one in the forest, but had decided to have officers patrol it all night. On top of that, one officer stayed with us. My foster parents allowed Caitlin to stay the night, as she was adamant to stay with me because of how scared I was. She slept with me that night, and I actually did manage to sleep. As much as I'd like that to be the end of the story, it wasn't. At about 4 a.m, the front door burst open. I woke up immediately, as did Caitlin. She rushed over to my bedroom door and pulled my chest of drawers in front of it. We both then sat against that to stop the door from opening. We stayed in the room until the police officer told us to come out. The officer had been shot, but only in the arm, and the assailant was pinned to the wall in handcuffs. It was the same man. He mumbled about a key, but I couldn't make out much of what he said due to his accent. I remembered about the key, and gave it to the officer after the man was taken away. The key was taken away as evidence, and that's the last I heard about it. It's been 4 years now, and though I live happily with my girlfriend in London, some 400 miles away from the village it happened in, I still find it so hard to walk in forests or woods. I never did find out what the key was, or why the man was so desperate for it he'd kill a young girl. That's what hurts the most, not knowing. Nothing's happened since, but Caitlin and I have taken a lot of martial arts training since then. Both of us are paranoid of it happening again.
D.
If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like to have a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check out the description on information on how to submit your story. Now for the first story. I'm glad I actually got to the email when I did. It's actually kinda crazy that I happened to be looking for stories for the 11th, and I saw that her trial was going to be on the 11th. Somehow it almost seems like poetic justice. I'm glad you're okay, and you were able to disarm this crazy lady. I'm curious as to how everything works out, so if you could, send me an email letting me know any updates when you receive them. I would really appreciate it. For the second story. Thankfully, just like the first story, this person was caught. It seems like crazy must be in the air or something. I'm curious as to what that big group of people was. Were they devil worshippers, or maybe just some cult? It really makes you want to know more. But at the same time, I'm happy that it's over so you're not going through any of it. Fortunately, they found the guy, and unfortunately, we're never going to know what that key was for. It's nice to read a story where someone calls the police as their first reaction. Obviously you had to hide first, but at least they were the first call you made. Very wise choice, Before I end this video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Rachel for this awesome fan art. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys tomorrow for another video, and just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.